The dance band era of the 1930s seems an age ago. The foxtrot was still the dance of choice for young people at roadhouses, dance halls and hotspots like Quaglino's and Grosvenor House. The BBC was not yet 10 years old, and Louis Armstrong made his historic first trip to Europe. In January 1935, a week before Tubby Hayes was born, Nat Ganella assembled his new band, the Georgians, for their second recording session. Lead saxophonist again was 26-year-old Albert Torrance, a man who celebrated his 102nd birthday in September 2011. Albert was born in 1909 near Dundee. While still young, the family moved to Hove, Sussex. He learned music from an early age, starting with violin, but switching to saxophone and clarinet while still in his teens. In the late 1920s, Albert played with a number of semi-professional bands in Hove, Brighton and back in Scotland. It was in Brighton that he first met Nat Ganella, who was playing at the Regent Ballroom.
Well, he was a member of Alexander's band. He was a trumpet player. He used to say to me, "Albert, come along." He said, you can play all the jazz clarinet stuff, and I'll blow my trumpet in your ear. That was a lovely day. When he lost his job at the Regent, everybody went back to London. And it was about that time that we all found other things to do, you know, other bands to join, all that. That's a musician's life. The wandering hermit.
Following the breakup of the Alexander Band, Albert joined Freddie Bretherton's orchestra, who had a residency at the Spider's Web, a hugely popular roadhouse at Watford Junction.
That photograph was taken at the Spider's Web. Freddie Bretherton on the piano, who became the musical director for Jack Hilton. Jack Hilton became impresario for several theatres down that way. The Apollo, I think, the Delphi, and several others. And Bill Evans on bass, Sue Harding on tenor sax, and it was a guitar player. I can't think of his name.
Bretherton's band included a young drummer named Dennis Pounton, who would shortly become better known as singer Denny Dennis, Britain's answer to Big Crosby.
He went to America and joined Tommy Dawson.
With the same fortunate man, you have danced with him since the music began. Won't you change partners and dance with me?
In 1932, Louis Armstrong made his first visit to Europe. He was met at Plymouth by Melody Maker's founding editor, Percy Matheson Brooks.
He phoned me up and he said, "Albert, Louis Armstrong's coming over. Would you play the clarinet with them?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" Pleased to do it.
Dinah, is anyone finer in the state of Carolina? If there is, then you know, show to me. Dinah, the Dixon blazing, we love the city gazing to the eyes of Dinah me. Baby, every night while I shake my fight, cause my dynamite change your mind, Bobby, this is your name.
An absolute gentleman. I never heard him speak a word out of place. I don't know where he was educated, but it was perfect.
Albert's old friend from Brighton, Nat Ganella, had already made a name for himself with his vocal and trumpet impersonations of Louis Armstrong whilst with the Alexander Band and Billy Cotton. He finally got to meet his idol whilst attending every performance of Armstrong's fortnight at the London Palladium.
Nat idolised him. He idolised Louis Armstrong. No doubt about it. There's many of Louis' specific phrases, which you can always recognise. Nat was starting to flavour. He did it pretty well, although he hadn't the lungs to produce Armstrong produced.
In 1934, Albert got a call from Nat inviting him to come along to a recording session. Also on the session were George Evans on second alto, Harold Hood on piano, Arthur Baker on guitar, Will Hemmings on bass and Bob Dryden on drums. Inspired by his theme song, Georgia on My Mind, which he had recorded with Lou Stone in 1932, he called the band the Georgians. For the rest of the 1930s, Ganella's parlophone recordings would become extremely popular, both in England and in Europe.
I was on a lot of them. Not all of them. I don't think anyone could be on them. All. Nat's music and Nat's type of playing had the most impact in Germany. They played a lot of their records on the German radio. So out of all of them, as long as it went on the air, then some money would come.
Albert was never a fan of touring, and while recording as a member of the Georgians until 1939, he chose not to join the smaller touring groups, much to the annoyance of Nat Ganella.
He was a bit cross about that. Then they went up to Norway. That made him even more furious, because he really thought it would have been a nice thing to do. He did very well up there.
Albert preferred to stay in London, where he played in theatre bands and joined Frank Gregori's house band at Quaglino's, as reported by the melody maker at the time. Gregori has made an inspired choice by securing the services of that excellent saxophonist Albert Torrance, whose prowess on alto, baritone and clarinet is very well known to all keen rhythm fans. Quaglino's was a celebrity hotspot, attended by film stars and royalty. It was where Edward, Duke of Windsor, organised a 37th birthday party for the not yet divorced Wallis Simpson. One of Quag's hit cabaret artists in the late 1930s was Hutch, the Caribbean singer-pianist Leslie Hutchinson, darling of royalty, muse and lover to Cole Porter.
He was good. He was very popular there. He was a good singer, you know.
There's one thing somehow about you, dear one, I can't understand. What makes you so adorable, so charming, so sweet? What can it be? Please answer me. What makes you...
He was a very heavily built fellow. I think his lung capacity was twice mine, because he could sing all those hefty songs.
When war broke out in Europe in 1939, inevitably many bands broke up as musicians signed up or were conscripted into the armed forces. Albert joined RAF Bomber Command and stayed there throughout the war. By 1945, the musical climate was very different.
We were all playing different types of jazz. It became once again very academical and very technical. We worked with band leaders who would produce the parts, just look at them, and just say, this is really for a symphony player.
When he joined Ambrose's orchestra, Albert found himself playing in a saxophone section alongside two of the leading post-war modernists, John Dankworth and Ronnie Scott.
I never understood Ronnie Scott because I played with him with the Ambrose Orchestra, and he's a very good player. And suddenly something went twitched in his brain. You don't commit suicide at the end, don't you? Oh man.
Through the 1950s and 60s, Albert joined London's last surviving society band, Sidney Lipton's Grosvenor House Orchestra. Based in Mayfair, Lipton held the residency at Grosvenor House for 4 decades.
It wasn't really a jazz occasion. It was more of an orchestra. There was a bank of violins there, full saxophone section, no brass, and a complete bass section here. And it sounded good. It sounded very, very good.
Albert continued to play professionally on and off until the 1990s. Now retired at the age of 102 and living in West London, he still gets out his saxophone and clarinet to share memories of his career, which spanned 8 decades, with people who are interested in the history of British jazz.